it was for sure F2A. She had hers.
You off video?
Oh,
Thank you.
this isn't the real stuff, but it's still good.
Ready? Okay, let's call court back into order. Going back to item F2A. This is for the FY21 budget. So Francis?
Yes, sir. So continuing today, we're going to start with the sheriff's office and all of their related departments. So I think we'll just get right into it. We're going to start actually with Department 0120, which is maintenance of equipment. And then recently, of course, it was moved under the direction of the sheriff's office. So we'll walk through those changes starting there. And again, it's Department 0120.
So we are, first of all, we've been in this department running for approximately 3 weeks. It's a very short period of time. This is not a budget that we turned in, but it's a budget we're going to try to adhere
Can't hear.
Oh. It's not a budget that we submitted to the auditor, but it is a budget that we're going to try to adhere to. This was done by someone who has much larger area of expertise in it than what we do at the time right now. If you look at the supplies line, the supplies line has gone up by $1,000. The furniture and equipment line has also been increased. The repair and maintenance line has gone up $1,000. When we looked at that historically, the repair and maintenance line, that line usually almost always has money that is transferred into that line almost every single year. So we kind of understand the increase associated with that line. And then professional development. Mike, do you remember what the additional funds were for?
So Wayne had put in, I believe it was 2,000 or so, to send two of the radio technicians, John and Dustin, to training in, it's either going to be in Austin or Chicago, Illinois, with the Motorola Tower project for the microwave links. They're going to be with those tower sites. So some required training, they have to go for that, and that's what that increase is for there.
Okay. Do you have any additional questions about this department?
Do we know, is that training still going to happen?
It will happen at some time. We don't know when just yet.
Any other questions?
And I'm guessing it'll be remotely instead of.
So I don't know that for sure. I think that is a possibility with the COVID-19 changes that we're facing. It was scheduled originally to be an in-person training class, a week-long deal. But that may end up going into a remote type training session as we get closer to that deadline.
Any other questions? This is Wayne's budget that he submitted. All right.
And just hate to butt in, but just I know we're just looking at operating right now on this, but personnel wise, we have this showing still as a department head there and haven't reflected a sergeant position there that would be over it. So I know that's something that you'll still may want to discuss, but we'll adjust that after you let us know what direction you'd like to go. Now we can move in to the other departments, starting with 2200, the sheriff's office.
Can you please take that $2,000 out of that and maybe put a dollar placeholder? Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Judge, is that something that you think that would be best?
So in case the training's something different than what we think it's gonna be, just because of all the changes.
Yeah.
And what we ask is the money that was originally in that fund for recertifications, the $850, the $2,000 in its entirety was not a complete amount that was for this training. There's also an amount in there for certifications and other things that occur within that department. And that's the $850 for the annual budget amount.
When do those recertifications come up?
Mike?
I don't know that information.
Because nothing's been spent this year.
Well, and that's mostly due to the COVID crisis. It's impacted training in all the departments that we control.
So the amount that Commissioner Jones asking to just put it on, you're saying there's, besides that training, there's other.
$1,150.
I'm sorry, say that one more time, sir.
Will, what did you say?
So I'm fine with leaving the 850 in there. But
And we don't have a problem coming back to the court when a determination is made as to whether that additional training happens, as long as the court remembers, consideration for it that we did originally ask for it, if that training does happen to come to fruition.
Okay. Is that clear? Francis?
Yes, sir.
And granted that the training does come to fruition and we're out from under the COVID situation, every effort would be made to make Austin instead of Chicago, right?
So, yeah, so,
Wayne would probably want it in Las Vegas.
No, no.
and so in reading the letter that Wayne had here with this budget, said the training for motor oil system is held in Chicago, Illinois, and said Aviant maybe in Austin. So I'm not, so it's one or the other, so, and I know that John's been working with Aviant this week on some stuff for the tower project. So we'll just have to see how that goes as the COVID-19 moves forward.
Okay.
So we brought that professional development line down back to the original 850. Those other lines, if there's increases, is there any other questions right now since they're here to answer? Are you good with those? Do they need to try to bring that budget back down to where it was last year, like we talked about yesterday?
And on supplies, where are we at through the year?
So as of that date, there's that $6,644. That was as of May 31st. And I can pull up
And we would like to remind the court too that some of that money was moved to repair and maintenance, and it was done so when the shop was not operational and we were having to outsource everything. So instead of stocking up on fuel filters and air filters and all the other supplies that we need out there, that money was spent on outsourcing during that large period of time when the shop was not operational to conduct those activities.
Good point.
And as of today, as of this minute, that about $9,000 has been spent out of the supplies line item.
So the only thing that we're going to consider as well is if there's a history of money being left in those line items, we would prefer if we've got $1,000 bump here and $1,000 bump there, take it from there.
So, and we understand that. And I have looked through this for a 3-year period to try and get a better understanding of how we've had a very short period of time to go through this, but we've done our best to try and go through. And Wayne's account usually, or I'm sorry, MOE usually comes out to be very close to even at the end of every year. The auditor could attest to his account is usually very, very close. We don't want to over ask for anything, but at the same time, we don't want to handicap ourselves in a line that is specifically related to conducting vehicle maintenance so that we can't get vehicles fixed. We got to wait 2 weeks and come to court and ask for money. And we feel that those are appropriate numbers based on the expertise that Wayne had when he submitted it.
And these lines, it's dependent on the year, but that repair and maintenance, when there's accidents that repairs are done and it's not a total vehicle, but just work needs to be done, that eats away at that very, very quickly. And so, like he said, there's had to been budget amendments moved from supplies and other line items, and it'll vary from year to year. But if you need more historical data, let us know and we can pull it.
And then with regards to your question, for the moment, yes. But as we work through this and we try to get to our target, things can change. I guess that's the best way to put it from my perspective. But yes, for the moment, I'm good with that.
And yesterday, I think y'all had already left, but the court had decided, and looking at the departments, that there were increases in operating and trying to bring those back down in total to what it was this current year. So
Sure.
that's what I think they're referring to.
Okay. And we'll go over some of that when we get into 2200, 2410, 2411, our other departments as well.
Right. So move on then. We'll move on to 2200.
Give her a sec to bring it up. So we'll start off in the Sheriff's Office Department 2200. You'll see an increase in the supply line. The supply line for the Sheriff's Office does feed some things from the jail as well, such as ammunition. All ammunition comes from the training, quote, training supply budget, which is contained within the Sheriff's Office 2200 budget. The JHDC new employees that we have are all going to have to go through that $35.99 jailer's firearm certification course. That is a state legislator mandated course for all jailers that carry a firearm. And typically we spin the jailers through a 40-hour course for that. And that course typically ends up utilizing around 10,000 rounds of ammunition for the certification of those jailers per course. And that is what we need to be in compliance with the $34.99 legislator mandate for our jail staff at 2411. Any questions or comments?
Any questions from anyone on that, Adam? Okay.
All right, next item is going to be furniture and equipment. We are decreasing that line from last year's request. One of the major items is radio replacements, and we do want to make the court aware of this because you'll see this showing up in other departments. The jail is going to have similar requests to this. Some of our Motorola APX 6000 radios have reached end of life service. We were notified that end of life service begins on December of 2019, and they will reach complete and total end of life service on 2021. So they will no longer support them, no more firmware, no more repair parts, absolutely nothing. So we're trying to notch away with that over a short period of time to get those radios replaced before they're no longer serviceable. All right, I'll move on to uniforms and insignias. We've had a slight increase, just ever so slight, due to the cost of uniforms, and we are trying to replace some of our SWAT teams' belts that they wear. They're pretty old and worn out, and some of that money is for the increase in uniform costs, and the rest of it is for replacing some of our entry team's belts. Moving on to cellular. We are asking for a few hotspots. One is going to be for training. Two of these are for the training division. One is for the jail training division, and one is going to be for the SO training division. These are not, this is not a COVID-related request. This is just something that wanted to do last year, and it got prioritized off during the cut y'all asked us to make. So we're coming back with this and asking for these for our training guys. The third one is for special operations. Is what that is for. Any questions? All right, moving on to other services and charges. There's some increases here for some contracts that we have. One of them is with a company called Collier. Collier has moved over from an a la carte where we buy individual units for the service that we receive. They have switched over to, much like cell plans did years and years ago, to the unlimited plan, and this is the increase to the part of this increase is due to the cost of that increase because they no longer offer the a la carte plan for that service. The other one is for Tracker Products LLC. Tracker Products is what we use to track, and that's the majority of this is Tracker Products. It's what we use to track our inventory, all of our evidence, all of our guns, anything that's issued to a deputy. Everything that we have an issue out gets put in here, and all the evidence in our evidence room and property room is also put in here. This service has gone up on their contract because the way they've changed the way they do their contract with licensing agreements, and that's part of this. And we had been asked if we had looked at other systems, and our problem is we're happy with this system, and we are so, it's so ingrained in what we do that we don't believe it's worth trying to seek a whole nother system just due to this increase in their contractual, our contractual obligation. Any questions? All right, centralized dispatch, that's a 100% contractual agreement. The court passed that. That's just baked into the Waco centralized dispatch contract. The last one here is Astray expenditures. So we have been tracking this line for a couple of years, and myself and my boss previously, Captain Whitlock, had put this off on increasing this because it's such a hit or miss line as to how many Astrays we're going to have every year. The fee schedule has finally gone up, and it has been where we have had to move money into that account every year for the last 2 years, and I believe this year twice already. So we are asking for an increase in that line due to the number of Astrays and a slight increase in the Astray cost. All right, any questions?
And so that department, and specifically 2,200, there's a total increase in operating of $81,371. And that does include, one of those is the contractual increase for the dispatch services.
We'll move on to Department 2410.
2410.
All right, the jail, this is a Highway 6 jail facility. There's been very few changes overall within this operating budget. You'll notice an increase of $16,000 in the supply line item. That is due to taser supplies and cartridges, batteries, things of that nature. So we have a new taser that they have obsoleted our old one. We've received a new one because the other one reached end of life, is no longer repairable. Basically, they break, they throw them away. And the new cartridges for the X2 system are slightly more expensive than what the cartridges were, and the training course that we have to put our jailers through per Taser Products LLC is each individual must fire 2 cartridges. So that has changed slightly, and the need for those has gone up. But that also includes batteries. That's not just cartridges. Any questions in regards to that? Okay. Next is the equipment line. The equipment line is going up slightly, and this is due to replacing some tasers that are broken. We have some old X26 tasers They are no longer serviceable. They will not repair them. When we send them in, they just tell us to basically buy a new one. There's no option on it. So you'll also see down in 601 an additional line for other services, and that is related to the tasers. So I'll come to that shortly. This is also going to help us replace some of the broken radios that we did not have funds to replace, and some of our end-of-life radios as well within the Highway 6 department. Any questions about those items? All right, moving on to repair and maintenance, or I'm sorry, other services and charges. What we're asking for here is we have done this with the court in the previous years. On the tasers, whenever we purchase tasers, we want to purchase the warranty program through Taser so that we get, number one, priority service on the repair of our items. And two, we don't have to worry about the costs between years 2 and years 4. So what that will allow us to do is any unit that we have between the initial manufacturer's warranty between years 2 and 4, we can send it in and they will just overnight us a replacement. So we don't have to worry about paying fees. Normally, when we have to send a taser in for repair, I cannot remember the last time that we haven't gotten a bill for the total cost of the taser. It's the total cost almost every single time, and those things are $1,300 a piece. We feel like this is a very equitable solution for the items that we're purchasing. Any questions? All right. That's all the operating changes that we have for the Highway 6 jail 2410, and we'll move on to 2411 now.
Yes, while we're here, I know this is out of order number wise, but you'll see in your spreadsheet, we have the Shep Mullins Visitation Center kind of attached down at the bottom. So our plan is this year to go ahead and merge that into the jail budget. It'll just be easier and to administer and on y'all's side and our side as well.
We're 100% in support of that.
So there's no change there at all. But we have it separated still, so at least you could just, kind of see it for this year. And then once the budget's decided on, we'll collapse those two sections together. So.
Okay.
So then moving on to 2411.
And this will be Department 2411. This is the new Jack Harwell Detention Center that we received in October of last year. I'd like to first of all report that everything is going phenomenal. Our budget is right on par. We're going to have some other things that we'll discuss with y'all later that are some other issues, but as far as the budget itself, the major has done a fantastic job in ensuring that we had a well-planned budget and that we are meeting those obligations. What we are asking for in this department, in the supply line, this is a very similar request that we're asking for in Department 2410 at Highway 6. The increase is due to certification of new jailers for tasers, taser cartridges, taser batteries, things of that nature. And that is for specifically for JHDCS of Highway 6.
I want to point out, we didn't buy any new tasers for that facility. We took some from Highway 6 last year and moved them to that facility. And some of these are the end-of-life tasers that he's talking about.
Coming down to equipment, this line is actually decreased, but the items that we're looking to purchase in there are going to be radios and tasers. We got to replace some of the tasers that we stole from Highway 6 that are now non-operational, but that's what that fund is going to be used for, is the replacement of end-of-life service radios, broken radios that are unrepairable that we have boxed up, and then tasers as well. Moving on to 601. Oh, protective clothing, excuse me. Protective clothing. We have all of our protective clothing is for our entry team out there at the jail is expired. And we need to replace that. We do not want to send our guys in with expired body armor, stab-proof vests. So we have decreased our furniture and equipment line in order to, try to balance things out as best we can so that we can ask the court for those, that body armor for those guys out there so we can have that level of protection. Moving on to other services and charges. This is the same as Department 2410. This is for the service contract for the tasers so that we don't have those worries between years 2 and years 4. If we have any issues, we get that overnight support. They cover parts and excuse me, parts and labor on those. Any questions? And the total increase in this department is about $38,000.
Jack Harlow, 12,000.
Oh, 12,000, I'm sorry. Excuse me, I'm on the wrong tab. I'm on 2410. I think we go over with you. It's $12,000. Even better.
Francis,
Yes, sir.
I have a question about the spreadsheet. So I'm taking that y'all have the salary request loaded in already in the,
No, sir. So the way that the top portion, and scroll up a little bit, the top portion is just based on current positions, current salaries. So if y'all add any or change any salaries, we'll upload those. But right now, like you see that 5,181.
I'm sorry, I misread that on that.
Yeah, so it says requested and it's in the requested column. But we just find it easier to leave that as it is and then add on if you decide to add or change any positions. But that'll tie directly to if you extracted the positions currently as of today, that would be the total salary amount.
So in this request, there's not request for additional FTEs. It's
Not on that spreadsheet you were
No,
looking
no,
at.
it'll be as we get
It's,
later in the pages, we'll go over the personnel requests.
we'll adjourn before we get there. Okay, I understand. And so this is based on last year's before any consideration for COLA or anything else.
Correct, correct. And this department looks a little bit different because there were some changes made after the beginning of the year trying to adjust to the running the two facilities.
Right.
So you'll see there was some adjustments made,
Right.
but that 5181,068 is what currently those positions cost us.
Understand.
All right, we move on to Department 2414. This is our Highway 6 Medical Department, and we have made no changes. We do have contracts down at the bottom for core EMR and for MHMR and psych services. But those are what they are, and there have been no changes in that department.
So MHMR, 334, 184
Correct, yes, sir.
in medical.
Correct. That's core health, and that's going to be for doctor services as well as telepsych services as well, and psychiatric
it's
services.
psychiatric.
So all that's up and running.
Yes,
How's it working?
it's very well. Especially during, everybody brings up COVID. You're hearing that too much today, but they've really stepped up and helped us volunteer to bring in staff and help out. So,
Right.
So I guess we can move on to Department 2415.
Okay.
That is the Jack Harwell Medical Department. The only change that we are making is a slight decrease in the furniture and equipment, just $33 there. And then if you look up at the overtime line, the 411960 line, that was an oversight on our part the first year. We did not fund that with any actual money, and the nurses work a mandatory, because the way their shifts are, amount of overtime. This is the real amount of overtime that we need to meet the minimum standard for the staffing and shifting at 2415 Jack Harwell Medical. Any questions?
Is that going to be enough?
Yes, sir. Well, and that covers the
I mean,
minimum staffing, sir. So if like we had a situation like
About
COVID,
half of what you're budgeted and projected.
correct, and that's due to we've had a lot of overtime due to a staffing issue, which we're going to get to later, which we're going to try to address, and due to the COVID situation as well, because we have had nurses working constant overtime. We've had some employees that were medical employees that were unable to work because of COVID. So we've had to use quite a bit of overtime to cover that. And we can move on to, don't want to do 7920?
Do you want to do it? Should we kind of just do it? We'll go to capital outlay.
Do capital?
Yes.
All
So we're Department 7920 is where we house all of our capital outlay expenditures. Excuse me. There's a grouping of those there that relate to the jail and to the sheriff's office.
Mhm. All right, so we're gonna start at the top. We've made the request at the top for the last 2 years. This is the digitization of our records at Highway 6 jail records. We're simply running out of space. Every year it gets a little bit worse. And then we've had to buy more cabinets and move into a different area and try to reallocate space so that we can get more and more space for these files. That is what it's been for the last 2 years. Our vehicle request this year, total vehicles is the same plan we've presented to the Commissioners Court for the last several years. Once y'all originally told us to come up with a plan for the rotation of our vehicles, is 16 vehicles. The total cost of the vehicles is around $966,000. Last year, and I want to make sure I say this right, the court approved around $690,000 originally for us to purchase vehicles. Later that year, the court told us to come back and ask, and we would see how we were doing for the remainder of the vehicles we did not get in the initial October budget. We did. The court gave us those funds. That was another $262,000. So that total that the court provided us, not in the original adopted budget, but total that y'all allowed us to spend on vehicles within this fiscal year, is around $955,000. So the increase between what we are asking for this year or next year and what we were provided this year is about $11,500. That is about $710 a vehicle. And that increase in cost is due to the cost of vehicles just going up ever so slightly. We've made no equipment changes or no major changes to our vehicle loadouts.
Any questions on that? All right.
All right, moving on. The only other item that we're asking for in capital is these MSA SCBA systems. These are to replace the outdated expired equipment currently in operation with our bomb squad. Our systems are so old that they are no longer even certifiable. The tank certifications have completely expired and we cannot get them certified. This will also allow us this system. This is 2 systems, by the way, which is the standard that's set forth by the FBI requirements. We'll be able to charge our tanks with the Waco Fire Department at no cost once we make this change over to this system. Does anyone have any questions about that?
Any questions? Okay.
All right, that concludes our capital outlay.
So we went through each department, the operating portion of each department, and then the capital outlay request. And then there's a sheet, and it's on your budget drive as well. It just says SO summary. So this just kind of sums up, David walked us through each line that changed, but you'll see each department. This doesn't include maintenance of equipment, just because it's a little bit different this year, but it goes through each department. It'll show you last year's adopted, the revised, the request, and then the difference.
Okay.
So in that far right column, you'll see the operating budgets. There's an increase of $132,403. And then the capital outlay, an increase to last year's adopted budget of the $347,903. You'll see David said, of course, y'all came back mid-year and gave them, and we did a journal entry out of, a budget amendment out of contingencies and moved some money in there so they could purchase some additional cars. So you'll see that the adopted versus the revised, there is that difference. That kind of sums up that. So
yeah.
So any other questions before they move on to the next topic?
I guess the big question would be is if we could go back to we could cut back on some vehicles and, you know,
And Commissioner, that was a concern.
This is just, you know, this is just as, you know, just as dire a budget situation as opening the, you know, taking over the Harwell. So.
And we're very sympathetic to that. And the issue that we have with the vehicles in general is every year we are on that knife's edge of replacing vehicles. We don't want to get into a situation. We're always going to do what the court asked us to, like we did last year. We certainly did what the court, we achieved what the court asked us to do. But it puts us behind. And when it puts us behind on these vehicles, we see the maintenance costs start going up astronomically. We see situations where we have delays in being able to provide services to the community because of vehicles breaking down and then us having to get spares or having to double up. There is a cost associated in putting it off. Every year that you put it off, the vehicle prices tend to go up a small percentage. So you are not spending the money this year to spend more money in the future. It's a very slippery slope, and you know, we're here to work with the court on this, but that's a hard place to take a hit when we have so many vehicles in service, so many old vehicles too, high mileage. And we have a list, Commissioner, of the vehicles that I believe Kevin Ferguson is in Zoom that we're trying to replace. Some of them are not necessarily the oldest vehicles, but the biggest maintenance issues that we have. And if you like, he can speak on that somewhat.
And I am here, Commissioners, if y'all can hear me.
Yes,
Can hear you.
Okay.
I think it would be good to provide that list to the commissioners.
Let me pull this up really fast. So each year we take our vehicles that are the most high mileage, the most, the expenditures on vehicle maintenance as a whole for that vehicle are normally the first ones we look at. And this coming year, we have a few high mileage Tahoes. They are starting to get to that point where they are starting to wear like we expressed last year. We've been very pleased with the performance of the Tahoes. And we're pushing some of these Tahoes in excess of 160,000 miles. I've come to discover through this period with the Tahoes that we can get roughly about 150,000 miles safely out of these vehicles. Once it passes that 150 mile mark, it starts to deteriorate, whether it be the suspensions or the engines themselves, the transmissions. This past year, we did have to replace a few transmissions on these higher mileage vehicles that I'm not sure, because Wayne did the actual purchasing of those transmissions, but it was, you know, several $1,000s a piece to replace. So
those Chevrolet transmissions are only designed to go about 130,000 miles. So
yeah.
I have experience with that. And so.
Right. So like I said, these Tahoes have performed very well for us, and we're pushing them to make sure that we get every bit of life out of those vehicles.
Well, if you could just send that list, that'd be.
Yeah, I can, would y'all like me to email it to each one of you commissioners? Or would you?
Fine. Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay, I will get those detailed for this past year and this coming year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just as a add-on, Michael Graham's here. We've had to replace an engine in one of these Tahoes this year at a cost of almost $9,000, correct, wasn't it?
That's correct.
And 2 transmissions at a cost of almost $6,000. So you may not see that cost in the sheriff's office budget by keeping old, worn out vehicles, but you're going to see it in a department down the line somewhere.
We've actually had to replace 2 motors this past year and 2 transmissions.
Okay.
I have one comment before we move on from vehicles. I'm trying to get this to pull up. So I think he was saying he was going to pull, I missed what he was saying. He's going to pull a list of the vehicles that,
Yes.
Okay.
The,
so, and we can, help
that's the
with that.
vehicles that we've identified as being problem vehicles.
Oh, okay. Problem
Vehicles
Okay.
that have high mileage, high maintenance costs. Since we run MOE, we get the reports from them. So
Okay. So one
we
way
know
to
what the
look at
problems
this, and through our fixed asset system, we can pull whatever vehicles you'll have right now, but we depreciate vehicles over a 10-year period. So depreciation isn't a tangible expense, but it is an expense. And so if you looked at what's being depreciated on all your vehicles each year, I mean, you almost have to look at it as we've got to replace what we're depreciating. I don't have that number, but we can get that on what the depreciation actually is, or was last year or this year, just strictly on sheriff's office vehicles. But just something to maybe consider and, lay that and see how that compares.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Because if we are literally depreciating it, it's losing value every year. And that might be something to compare to what you're actually spending each year to replenish.
Sure.
I just had one question.
Yes, sir.
Are y'all still using those vehicles for allowing deputies to use them after work for their side jobs and for working on traffic and idling on the side of the road? Are they still doing that?
No policy and procedure regarding that has changed from the previous year.
So they're still using them after work, and that's a lot of the wear and tear that's going on to the cars. So that's one thing that, is really, in my opinion, I've already said it, and I know y'all didn't get to see it before, didn't probably hear it before you brought your deal in. I'm asking all the elected officials, all the department heads, and I know I'm going to do it. I want them to either do less than they did last year or the same amount they did last year. We've got our business owners in a crisis that they've never seen before. We've got our people that are working, that don't have jobs to pay their house payment and their taxes. We just everybody needs to buckle down and bite the bullet this year, because we've got to do the best we can to do with what we have.
Yes, sir. We understand that. That was taken into consideration. We're very aware of how COVID and this year has affected the county and the businesses. We're a living example of it. We're first responders. We don't get to take off. We have individuals in our facilities that have tested positive. We have employees, we have inmates, we have medical staff, we have people in administration. This has impacted us in a very huge way. We are not sympathetic to that, but at the end of the day, we have got to conduct business and continue. We don't get to take off. We don't get to slack off. We get to keep providing services to the community because our constituents demand it.
But our constituents that's paying our salaries are not working. Their businesses aren't open. A lot of them are working at half occupancy. That's why I'm asking all elected officials and department heads to dig deep this year and not increase their budget at all.
So
or cut it if possible.
And we believe we've done that. If you look at the overall request that we've made, you're talking about in these individual departments, fractions of a percentage increase for supplies, for certifications and things of that nature. If Francis went back to the sheet that shows the overall by department breakdown, even our capital outlay, we have been very diligent in trying to source these vehicles from different vendors to get the best possible price that we can to try and replace some of the some of the cheaper vehicles that we can to make sure that we're being considerate of the situation. We're very considerate, and we completely understand. So if you look at the operating costs within the, right there on the screen, the sheriff's office and the 2 jail facilities, those are ultimately not large requests. And they are not something, we cut everything that we possibly could before we came to the court, because we do understand the situation and we are sympathetic to it. Any additional questions?
Any more questions?
Not at this time.
Do you want to do the 401 thing, or are you going to wait for TJ?
You could, I think maybe since you're here coming from y'all, that might be good. We will talk about permanent improvement on this coming Tuesday with TJ Jackson. One of the items is related to the sheriff's office. So thought he could go ahead and give some background on it, and that may help the conversation next week when TJ describes it as well.
Can you?
And it is the sheriff's office evidence room modifications.
Okay, so we had approximately 1,100 square feet of the sheriff's office tied up with the 911 backup center. We were contractually obligated to provide them with that space. They have since moved that facility to the new EOC, and we have reclaimed that 1,100 square feet of office space. Our evidence room and evidence technicians, what we are trying to do is modify that space in the most economical manner that we can to come up to the ITAPE standards for evidence, which we have a few things that we need to address that are not correct, proper, and in coordination or with the evidence standards that we need to store this stuff. This is also going to be to move the evidence ladies to that new 911 or that new reclaimed 1,100 square feet over there, which is directly attached to the evidence room / property room / weapons vault. Does anyone have any questions about that? We're essentially out of space. Like, we have people in broom closets. We have nowhere to put people any longer, and we have got to try and do something to reallocate that space so that it doesn't just sit there unutilized, because it's been unutilized since November.
So TJ will be addressing that with court.
And he can give you the technical construction information, but I just thought coming from them, they could give you the
And so
background on
it will
that.
be converted to expansion of evidence room or whatever.
Evidence property, and for the evidence clerks, the technicians that we have that work that specific area, that room actually, the 911 room backs up directly to the property room. Their current office is 2 offices away in between them and the actual property evidence room. So we want to put them right on the back side of it. Then we can repurpose the little homemade cubicles that we have for them for other office space. Space is always a premium for us. It's always a huge problem. We were very grateful to get this square footage back, and we would like to be able to put it to some level of functional use, because right now it's just in complete disarray once 911 pulled all their stuff out.
Okay.
So next, do you want to go into personnel,
Sure.
or is there anything else that before that?
No, that should be it. Wait for her to bring this up.
So Haley's gonna, this is a listing all the personnel. She's gonna just pull the ones related to the sheriff's office and the jail. I believe there's one salary increase request, and then 16 new employee requests.
All right, yeah, hold on, let me check that with mine real quick, make sure it's the same thing. Yes, that is correct. All right, so we're going to start off in Highway 6. Every year we come in for Highway 6 and ask for personnel to try to maintain headway on the jail standards staffing evaluation from 2015. Last year, the commissioners, we didn't ask for a lot because of the conversion for Jack Harwell. And we are coming back this year to try and ask for positions to maintain headway on that staffing analysis from the Texas Commission on Jail Standards. The one position that you see at the very top, I'll hit that one too. There's a related position below that. So these are grievance officers. When we took over Jack Harwell, we were processing an average of 90 grievances per month, and we've had to place a staff into that position. When we took over Jack Harwell, that number of grievances went from 90 per month to over 200. It has more than doubled. We are asking for, you'll notice down the list too, in Department 2415, a jail corporal. Where's that line here? Right there. That is related to the top position. We're asking for one positional increase for the staff that we have placed in the jail investigations division, so to speak, to process those grievances and disciplinaries. And then one for Jack Harwell to pick up the over 100% increase in grievances. We've had to pull someone from staff to do it. We could not man it. It was not obtainable or sustainable at that point. So that's the 4, the corporal, and then the 2415. We'll move on to 2 jailers in 2415. And we'd like to remind the court that last year when we took over Jack Harwell, y'all asked us to cut a number of positions, and we agreed to do so. We cut 9 positions on recommendation from the court. There are some of these positions that we have determined we cannot live without. And Major Armstrong had told y'all, we will try to make this work to the best of our ability. 2 jailers in Department 2411 is for laundry and utility. We originally thought that we could take on the laundry from Jack Harwell within the Highway 6 facility. Not only can the personnel not handle it, the laundry room itself cannot handle it. We have had to assign a staff person to the laundry room in Jack Harwell in order to process the laundry. There's just not enough hours in the day for the employee or for the room to be utilized. We can't get it all in the period of time that we need to get it done and recycle back out to the inmates. The other one in 2411 is a utility officer. We had originally thought that the painting, the grounds work, and other minor activities that I'll discuss in a second could be handled by a single person. We took the facility over, and it took our utility officer from Highway 6 with an inmate crew 4 days just to do the groundskeeping. That doesn't include the other activities that they engage in, such as general small maintenance items, recovering mats. There's many other activities that those people engage in, and we've assigned a staff person to that over at Jack Harwell because we could not do without it. We have to have the painting, we have to have the groundskeeping. We run a female crew at Jack Harwell, and they actually do sewing. They sew masks for us during this epidemic, but they also do mattress repairs. They also repair uniforms. There's a myriad of activities these people, this crew engages in. It's not just mowing the lawn and painting the walls, although that is a large time sink for them. That's those 2. Let's move on to admin assistant. And if Major Armstrong wants to talk about this one.
So we hired a civilian file clerk to help file paperwork at Jack Harwell with the amount of inmates we had over there. Well, that job has turned into basically an administrative assistant's position. We didn't realize that with the way that facility was set up, that there has to be somebody there to answer the phones and deal with the attorneys when they come in because of the layout of the facility. So she's turned into dealing with all the phones calls that come into the facility, taking care of myself and the other command staff with some of our schedules, some of our Texas Commission on Jail Standards reports. And she is not doing file room work. So what I'm asking for is an administrative assistant's position to move her into that so we can get our file clerk back to help us catch up on our file work also that needs to be done.
All right, moving on. One of the positions, and this was a position last year that y'all directly, or that we ended up cutting directly upon y'all's recommendation to try and make that $1.2 million in cut, is a jailer sergeant. We have an individual out there. We basically had to place an officer into a supervisory role. That individual is in charge of transport. They're in charge of the federal housing, federal billing, anything and everything that we do with the feds. This individual is the reason that we get the money. She keeps up with all the man days. She submits all the reports when the auditor asks us for information. She's the one that's maintaining all these records. She deals directly with with the Marshal Service for not only the transport, which is it's jail administration, but also transport, which is a 6-man division in and of itself. We're running inmates to Austin, San Antonio, all over the lower part of the state of Texas. And that service is required for us to have these inmates basically from the feds. The feds are not going to give us inmates unless we're going to transport the inmates. They are keeping track of an incredible amount of stuff to not be a supervisory position. And we believe that that was a necessary position in FY20, and we believe that it's even more necessary now that we've been doing it in FY20, coming for FY21. So any questions?
Are y'all not getting reimbursed from the feds for transporting their inmates?
We certainly are.
We are.
We certainly are.
And that doesn't cover that cost?
Well, that's a revenue. I mean, it's.
Yeah, that's a revenue. So
I mean, is there any way you can contract that out where we don't even have to deal with it and they take care of that for us? Instead of growing personnel every year, if we could contract that out to a service, then they would pay that fee and we wouldn't be bringing on another head on the county payroll.
Are you talking about the jail transport services?
Yes.
We are, okay. Is this
I guess if we outsource that function.
We have entered a contract with the feds for us to do it. And I'm sure that, I don't know if they would be up for that being outsourced. The contract they entered into with was us in particular. And part of that per diem rate that we are charging includes transport. So there is an hourly rate, if you look at the contract, that is baked in there specifically for transport and for those services that we provide.
6 transport officers. Yeah, we have 6 transport officers that do most of the Fed transports, and all federal transport hours are tracked and billed to the federals. So that revenue does come back to the county.
So is that not paying for the positions? My question.
Well, the revenue doesn't come back to us. That comes back.
I know, but what is the revenue that you're bringing in versus what the cost of having the employee is what my question is.
So we could pull what's been billed out and for support. Of course, this is the first year that we've done that. Because he's just talking about Jack Harwell, correct?
Yeah,
I don't
transport.
have the transport, so I can tell you what we've billed for so far this year, but that's housing and transport, not just transport.
Yeah, because it's all in the
We
price
bake it in.
that we negotiate with,
Correct.
those are federal
Yes, sir.
rates that we're paying.
Yeah.
Which is much higher than our rates,
Mhm.
but part of the transportation and housing is all, as he said, baked into the overall price.
From October to May, we have, this is not anything to do with what we've actually received. We have billed the feds for approximately $5 million from October to May. And under that trend, we will have about 7.3 million by the end of the year. There's been a slight taper off in the last few months due to BTC and things like that being done remotely, but it's minor overall.
Yeah, it's important that we keep that relationship with the feds. It's what's offset a lot of our good bit. In fact, it's not only met, but it's been better than what we had thought was going to be.
Absolutely.
And so having all that, it makes it simple for the feds to do a contract with us if we've got it all rolled up in one price. They don't want to go to a lot of trouble to.
And they're very happy.
Yeah.
Speaking with them and the supervisor, Robert Garman, they speak highly of the way our staff operates.
Yeah, we've had other marshal services within the state who need housing come to us all the way from areas like San Antonio because of the good service that we're providing for the local marshal service. And I will tell you my personal experience, we have done outsourced transport in the past. We would not have any federal inmates if we went to a contract with an outsourced company because the service they provide is so substandard to what we can provide with our own deputies. We have a very excellent level of service that we provide, and we have to do that to maintain those inmates for those mandates.
That's where a third party puts us at risk for losing the relationship. It's pretty profitable for us, way I look at it.
Yep.
All right, any additional? All right, moving on. The next thing is there are 2 investigators for Jack Harwell Detention Center. So our current investigation unit out there, and this was part of the things that we had asked for last year that got cut because we anticipated there was going to be a hike up. We just weren't sure how much. And now we're here to talk about how big of a hike up that actually is. This is for PREA, as well as regular jail investigations, disciplinaries, IA, things of that nature. So pre-Jack Harwell Detention Center, the PREA investigations per month that were being conducted by the PREA investigator at Highway 6 was approximately 8.4 PREA investigations. The post-JHDC takeover PREA investigations has gone up to 27, almost 28 actually. So it has almost tripled, almost tripled in the amount that we are doing on these PREA investigations. The population increase has only been approximately 44%. At the end of the day, the population increase has not accounted for the increase in calls for service that we have received. The PREA investigations have gone up by 229%. Disciplinaries as well, very similar story. We were at 126 on average per month for 2 years prior to JHDC takeover. And in the months since we have taken over up until May is the most recently that I updated, it was 269. It's over double on our disciplinaries. And these are not rinky-dink deals that we have to look into. Some of these are very complex. PREA stuff is regulated by the federal government. We have got to be on top of that stuff. We do not want to be held not in compliance, because being held not in compliance not only hurts us as a facility, it also hurts our relationship with the feds. We have got to maintain a good working standard. That's the reason we have the number of inmates and have been able to maintain that number of inmates and that relationship is because we provide an excellent service. In my opinion, one of the best in the state. Anyone have any questions about those?
Any questions?
Moving on to medical. This is in Jack Harwell. We are asking for 2 nurses and 1 assistant director of nursing. These were not originally asked for last year that were cut.
So these are new positions.
Yeah, and I'll talk on
Correct.
that real quick.
Sure.
When I looked at the staffing for the nurses, I put in 1 per shift and a relief factor of 1.2. Well, that comes out to 6 nurses and there's 4 shifts. It just doesn't work. I need two more nurses, two on each shift to make it work to where they can get their jobs done. And I take full responsibility for that. I was a bad judgment in my error on the budget and with the nurses last year. On the assistant DON.
And Major, can I
Go
say
ahead.
something?
Yeah.
That ties back into the question y'all asked earlier about the overtime within Department 2415.
Right.
Is that going to be enough? It will be if we get the appropriate staff to staff the shifts.
Yeah.
That is our assumption.
And on the assistant DON position, that position is, they asked for more than what we presented here. They wanted an infectious control nurse, which now wouldn't be a bad idea. But my medical department and my director of nursing, the core health and my director of nursing sat down and presented their budget to us. And then I've cut some of it before we even brought it to y'all. But like I said, they asked for an infectious control nurse. This was before COVID even hit. But my thought process in that was the assistant director of nursing can help with some of those duties. So I combined some of these. I've got a director of nursing that oversees both facilities, but he can't be at both facilities at the same time. So assistant director of nursing would pretty much manage Jack Harwell. And in the absence of one or the other, they would both be able to answer for both facilities. So that's what we're looking.
And this was asked for. This is not something that was asked for due to COVID. This was all pre-COVID requests. These requests are not being made because we're trying to staff up for some long-term COVID. On that ADON too, there's quite a few reports that they want that individual to engage in paperwork-wise, scheduling, state reporting. The infectious disease portion, which Major Armstrong touched on, is very vital for the facility, not for COVID reasons, but for tuberculosis, for the AIDS testing that we do, all these other testing, so that individual can provide a report to the state and to local health authorities in regards to that hepatitis, all that other stuff. Corona has become relevant, but it was not our concern, nor was it the main driving motivation for this position. Prior to
So what was the overtime that you were paying last year when you didn't have those versus spending another $201,000 to get 3 additional people? What was the overtime amount?
Stand by 1 second, sir.
Sometimes it's just cheaper to pay the overtime.
Yeah, but you got wear and tear on staff. When you can't keep staff, we're having a problem keeping staff.
We certainly are.
That's an issue when you start working your people all those overtime mandatory hours. And then medical care as well. When you can't have people there, you're working shorthanded. I mean, we're not saying that we were fully staffed on medical staff all those days. So to provide the proper medical care, this is the staffing of nurses that we need.
So Haley pulled up there that actual expenditures through May 31st, the projected and then the request. And that projected, of course, is based kind of formula based, has some factors, several factors, but of course, the way this year is going, that projection, formula might not be the best way, but that's our best guess at this point.
And if you also looked in Department 2414, there are times when we have people call in sick, low staffing numbers. We have got to answer those medical calls. So if you look in 2414 at the overtime, it's not as pretty of a picture.
And I know we're trying to keep these budgets separate, but there's times those nurses have had to fill in at the other facilities.
We have to accommodate emergencies for medical, especially during this pandemic.
And I don't know how we can fix that, but I'd like to visit with you at some point about that. I don't know what to do with it.
How do you coordinate your staffing needs with our third-party vendor, Core Health?
So Core Health provides all the medical providers, the doctors, the physician's assistants. They coordinate their staffing. Then our director of nursing coordinates all of our nurse staffing and where they're needed. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, pretty much. But so you're just staffing for the areas that they don't cover. I mean, the times. In other words,
Core Health provides our doctors basically and our psychiatrists. They don't provide any nurses for us. The nurses all belong to the county.
Gotcha. Okay.
Pill pass, blood pressure, temperature checks, all the like RN and LVN duties
Yeah.
that provided at a hospital or what our nursing staff conducted.
Okay.
All right. Moving on to the last two position requests. These are within Department 2200. Number one is going to be base investigator. Crimes against children have been on the rise across the country and with McLennan County. In 2019, the Sheriff's Office worked approximately 163 cases involving children. Children, of course, some of the most vulnerable population that we have. A major intake that we have undergone that has ticked up for us is our CPS referrals. We have started receiving approximately 563 CPS referrals per year. About 163 of those turn into legitimate cases every year. The average case, when I go through the stats, takes approximately 20 man hours per child case, whether it's a exploitation, sexual assault, aggravated sexual assault of a child, whatever that case may be, but around 20 man hours on average. And our detectives just cannot keep up anymore with these CPS referrals and the cases that come from those. That's one of those positions. The second one is we're asking for a base investigator. And that is going to be for the HB 892 game room investigator. The court passed a interlocal agreement with the city of Waco that makes us the permit authority. And currently Waco as a city has approximately 50 game rooms that they monitor. They do that with 5 officers. They do about 10 game rooms per officer or detective, if you will. We currently have 10 game rooms, and we have some individuals that we've been splitting this duty up amongst. In the last very short period of time, we have burned 300 hours worth of labor, not including any of our administrative time from Captain January. We have had people come in and ask us, like the city of Belmead, to put on a PowerPoint presentation as to how we're going to enforce this in their city.
How we're going to enforce it in their city?
We're responsible.
Well,
I don't agree.
I understand.
the order does not say that. You
Okay.
guys may choose to say that, but the order does not say that.
That
And we're
particular
open.
piece of it, we probably should share until we get that resolved.
Sure. We can move on from that.
Okay, that's fine. Thank
We
you.
can move on from it. No problem. That's the final position.
Okay. Okay, anyone have any questions? Okay. Anything else?
I think that covers all of our departments.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Is there anything before they leave, any task that any other information you need after today or anything you'd like them to look at a little further?
More than happy to provide the court with any answers that we didn't answer today. If y'all provide those to us, we will work diligently to get y'all that information.
You laid it out well.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's going to be a ton of questions.
And on that one that we just questioned, just on the 10, you were talking about there's 10 outside of what the city of Waco's doing. I'd like to know where those are.
We can certainly get you that information.
Locations of game rooms. And, you know, and specifically if there's any outside incorporated areas.
Sure. Let me just jot down a quick note.
You can send that to the whole court, be great.
And David, I don't remember if you, but in the very beginning, the court was adamant that this could not cost us additional full-time employees. It was very adamant.
I don't think I was here for that. I do remember that being relayed to me. I do, sir. And we had made the recommendation originally, and I remember that you specifically were very against the addition of adding new employees. And we can't absorb the calls for service and the time. And we're willing to have a more in-depth discussion with you guys about, or you gentlemen and ladies about that. We can bring y'all some more hammered out statistics as to what we're currently doing, how we're doing it, where we're doing it, what calls we're receiving as far as service in relation to this. And we'd be more than happy to get that information and share it with you guys.
And it may take a review of the entire order again.
That's understandable.
So, and that's but anyway.
And if that happens, we would be more than happy to be a part of that so that we can make sure that the court and the constituents are happy with what's going on in regards to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank y'all very much.
All right. Take care. Pardon me?
I haven't seen from Mark
Oh,
about, we have Zane available.
okay.
I know he was on earlier. So, so if Zane is available, okay. He had put together some information regarding bridges, low water crossings. So we briefly talked about that yesterday. This is also on the budget drive. There's a, I think it's just called bridge information is the title, and it should be out there. If you can't find it, let us know. Haley's gonna bring that up on the screen too.
Okay.
And so, y'all discussed the need of having something in the budget to fund these projects, these needed projects. And so he has this, and then I think if he just wants to start, maybe kind of go through what this is and explain
Okay.
the items.
All right.
If that's okay with y'all to go through
Yeah,
now.
it is.
Okay.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Good job.
So Judge, the screen before you is what I had yesterday, and I've actually got more information today from Precinct 3, but what's before you today, there in front of you is Precinct 4 and Precinct 1's current list of bridge and low water crossing needs. Some of them we've already started on, like item number 4 and 5. We've already hired CP&Y engineering firm to do the design, and they're working on those. Or getting really close to finishing up those designs. Then we'll advertise that bridge work to be constructed. We also have item number 6, Rattler Hill Low Water Creek Crossing, being designed by LAN, another local firm, and they're getting close to finishing up that design. The estimated prices there are just that, estimated. The 12th Street Bridge in Precinct 1 at Flat Creek, that bridge is still having problems. It's being washed out. The abutment is being washed out every time we get a large rain, and we're having to.
Hey, Zane,
Yes.
we're having trouble hearing you. I don't know if everybody else is, but in here, pardon me? Yeah, and so I don't know if you need to readjust your speaker or set a certain distance from it and try to maintain it, but it gets real garbled.
Okay.
All right.
Is this better?
Yeah, I can hear you better.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll start over. So on what you have before you is a list I had yesterday. I sent to Francis, and items
Not
4.
doing any better.
It's worse. So any suggestions anybody have?
Well, I can tell you on the one thing on the 12th Street Bridge, I don't know if you hear me or not, that is a low estimate because the one right down the street from that one was like $800,000. And it's only about, a half mile down. And I think that is going to have to be expanded the same length. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Better now. You have to get close to the mic, I think.
All right. How's this?
Better.
Yeah, so the other 12th Street Bridge that was recently thinking about
Nah, you ain't doing any better now.
What if he could come over to the court?
come over to the court if you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll be there shortly.
Okay, do we want to try to get somebody else on the phone or take 5 minutes or?
Yeah. We can move on to something else, or we
Okay,
take a
then.
short break.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Can we have a break, please?
Okay, yeah, we'll take 5 minutes recess.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Dustin. Talk to her about it.
Today, because I know you don't want to have to all day.
Well, personnel was one that she has brought up numerous times, and so we thought, well, let's just go ahead and address that now and talk to her. Okay, let's call court back to order. Just in time. We have Zane Dunham, Esquire.
Sir?
Thank you. Okay, thanks for coming over, Zane.
My pleasure.
So if you want to,
Okay, so what you have before you is a list that was compiled yesterday on items that we had at that time. And you can see that those items in blue are in precinct 4 and the ones in gray is in precinct 1. Some of them are bridge work, some of them are low water crossings, and they subtotal up to $1.9 million. And that's just an estimated price. As Commissioner Kelly was saying earlier, that 12th Street Bridge, even though it says 500,000, that's just raising that bridge from a 5-year flood to a 10-year flood.
Mhm.
The other 12th Street Bridge was raised to a 50-year flood structure design. So it was going to did cost more,
okay,
but anyway, so that's what we had yesterday. And then today I received this, what I handed out today, which is from precinct 3. And that's 5 more projects, bridges and box culverts and low water crossings. So that's easily another $1 million right there, probably 500,000 to $1 million. With the priority being the item number 5, County Line South. Of course, you know, you all know Tawakona Creek is a large drainage watershed. It washes that road out. They have to work on that like 7 to 10 times minimum each year. And it's just constantly they're working on it. So we need to fix it once so they can get on to their other business.
Mhm. Okay, and so that one, what would be the price on that one?
We would need to do a flood study first. So that'd be probably 5,000 to 10,000 to get us to determine whether we can just do a more permanent low water crossing, or do we need to do a bridge, or do we just need to put box culverts in there, raise the road and put box culverts? If it's box culverts, you're probably looking at $150,000. If it's a bridge, you're looking at, you know, could be $500,000. So I would just estimate 500,000 total to get the flood study, and then whatever the engineering is, and then the construction of the bridge.
That is a terrible creek. It, they've been working on it 1951. And all the flood structures is put in. Once they're all full, you put a cup in one side, a cup comes out the other. So you're back to the same amount. So the 50-year flood is, you know, if you're not doing it for 50 years, then you're not doing anything. So it'd be expensive. If you do anything to block it, it's going to run around it.
Right. And the price I gave was probably not for a 50-year structure. It's probably more like a 25-year structure.
Yeah.
And that's just it. I mean, if we're going to try to do the 50-year or the 100-year, you're talking a lot more money. So I don't have the estimates because we haven't gone out.
Okay, on all these bridge projects, obviously they can't all happen at once anyway.
Correct.
And so I guess what it would be is the court needs to decide how they want to handle bridges. I mean, the idea has been bantered around is have a separate deal, which I think that's a good idea.
So I definitely think there needs to be a way to budget for doing testing doing flood studies, and then doing the engineering design. That's something we can do now and maybe hit all of them or most of them. At least we have an idea then with a better estimate of what it's going to cost to construct the final product, whether it's a low water crossing or a bridge. And at that time, we can do a better job of prioritizing which projects we do first.
So you think that would take pretty much all of 2021 to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
I had a question. Zane, I didn't see any precinct 2 bridges on your spreadsheet, but I know we had talked about 2 issues. And I guess why didn't, are we not going to do anything with is it 7 Mile Lane?
You're correct, Commissioner. 7 Mile Lane Bridge does need to be replaced. It was identified by TxDOT as a bridge that needs to be replaced. It is on the off-system bridge list. And I believe you have another bridge too that needs to be addressed. I have not received a full list from precinct 2 or precinct 1 yet, but I do know each precinct does have bridges and low water crossings. This is just the information I have today, and it's more than we can handle financially. It's just a place to get started and start the discussion.
Okay, I guess I need to apologize because I didn't know we were working on a list. I know we had met on and off about a couple of issues. For instance, the culvert on Masonic. Is that a project that would make that list, especially with the strategy that we talked about?
Well, the culverts, if it's just replacing culverts, I'm thinking that should probably just fall within each precinct's budget. But if it's a low water crossing or a bridge, I think that gets to the cost that it needs to be borne by the entire county budget.
Okay. Are we looking at because I know you just said flood studies, because if I'm correct, didn't we ascertain that the backup of that water is affecting all the way back to Lincoln City?
That could very well be, but culverts, I mean, we're either going to replace the culverts that are failing in the same place with the same size, or maybe a little bit bigger size, or maybe a few more of the same size. But that's not the same issue of a low water crossing or a bridge that would need
I would agree. Thinking of a flood study, I would agree it's not the same. But I thought you mentioned something about flood studies.
We certainly can do a flood study, yes.
I guess, and maybe I didn't see the email where you asked us to address that and get that information to you. So I guess we can get together so we can make sure that we get our projects on that list.
To be in all fairness, Commissioner, that email went out, I believe, yesterday. And it did not go to the commissioners. It went to the foreman and just requested them to start looking for bridges and low water crossings that they know that are problematic, and to get it back to me by the end of the week. But that's something that can be discussed later. I just wanted to have this get started today to talk.
Okay, my foreman is out self-isolation, so could you just CC that to me?
I sure can.
Okay, appreciate it.
Okay, so have we established the department?
So we have a department called County Road and Bridge. It's really, where it's budgeted, that's what we're charging. It's all in general fund.
Okay.
So, we can isolate the bridge.
Can't hear Francis.
Can you hear me now?
Not really.
Francis, keep
Oh.
Just do this, like that's one.
Test. Can you hear me now?
Your microphone's not working.
The dead battery. Francis, you want to use this microphone?
Okay, are we good now?
Way better.
Perfect. So,
Okay, so is it an established department right now?
yeah, so we have a county-wide road and bridge,
So-
and we could budget the bridge activity there, since it's a little bit outside your normal road and bridge operating, and they're
Right.
kind of isolated there. We can also budget it within the road and bridge precinct departments. It's just, where it's budgeted, that's where we need to charge it. It sounds like right now, we definitely need to budget for some flood studies and some professional services to get everything rolling this year. So we could, of course, budget that and there in the countywide road and bridge. And then I know Zane could help y'all orchestrate those studies.
Correct.
And so I don't know if we need to, does it sound like, do we need to go ahead and budget and anticipate any bridge work being done in 2021? Or is that, I don't know what the timeline is of how long that takes to get going.
Well, Zane, we put in like, I don't know, 8 truckloads of rock in that one hole on 12th Street that came from behind the head wall. Can
Yes,
you hear me?
yes.
And that bridge there, we've already ordered the flood study on it, haven't we?
Correct.
When do you think they'll be through with that?
Probably the next 30 to 45 days.
Okay. Because it's going to take 1 or 2 good rains, and I think that will be in the same place that other bridge was at. We'll have to close that road again.
You're probably correct, sir.
Okay.
So-
Well, the main thing is a good reason to put these bridges outside the precinct's budgets is because sometimes something happens to these bridges that devastates the budget for the precincts. And so if they didn't have to worry about that, and then we had it up under one overall budget and let Zane and his department kind of give us advice every year, just like TJ give us advice on roofing or anything like that, and just take that risk, that budgeting risk out of the precincts. So in the 2021 budget for the precincts, we would need to look and see how much money that they, the commissioners tell us how much money they budgeted for bridge work.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're ready for it, we can just transfer that out of that liability out of their budget into the countywide road and bridge. Does that sound all right to y'all? I mean, that's the objective of it.
Yeah, I think just having it in the countywide one, like I say, because some are going to be more than others. You just never know how much it's going to be.
Yeah, right. Or when it's going to happen.
Well, we created a line in this department, that department 3650. There's a line that's infrastructure bridges. So that would be where we'd actually, charge the cost of the bridge, and we could extract that easily to depreciate it. We can create another line that's like a professional services or flood study line, and we could put a budget there as well. So you can.
Yeah, we would need a line for flood studies, a line for professional services, which would include the geotechnical testing, as well as the bridge design, the engineering design.
And then for right now, you can, before the budgeting process is over with, you give us an idea about what ought to go in those funds.
All right.
Would that work?
That'd work. I mean, I don't know what right now, as you can tell, we've already got roughly 2 million, and that's just with precinct 4 and 1. And then you throw in precinct 3, they've got 5 projects. That's probably another 1 million. So that's 3 million right there.
Right. And that's over in the long term.
That's correct.
Yeah. So let's worry about being able to fund and do whatever research you need to do in 2021 to the best of your, just a guess or whatever. I mean, an educated guess. And then we'll have, if something disastrous happens, then I think that would constitute an emergency because it's in a road. and we could accommodate that if we had additional expenses.
I'd if possible, $1 million, but at the very minimum, 500,000 to get us started
in this
in this coming 2021 fiscal year.
So is there any thought on 500 or $1 million? Should we?
I think it ought to be $1 million at least, because I think there'll be several bridges that will go this next year.
And then, maybe some ideas on what those flood studies and those services would cost, and then we can plug in something in there
Just-
as well.
I'd put in another 500,000.
Oh, okay. Sorry. For the, I was thinking. Like 500,000.
Because the thing is each commissioner could, put their bridges in to Zane, and then they can tabulate which bridges need done first and work from there.
And if there's any money already budgeted in the precincts for bridges, we can reverse that back out and reduce that budget and then increase this one.
Yes. So
Or are we not?
That's probably, I don't think that's happening right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I would agree with you if it were.
Yeah, no, I think we've just been having to take it out of our own budget if we have it happen. And that's the problem, is nobody has that much money to spend on a bridge. Fortunately, we didn't have to pay all the one that was done down the road, the 800,000, because that was on the TxDOT replacement program. And I'm hoping that Zane can keep that going where we can get them to do the bridges that they'll do. It's just the ones they won't do that are failing before they're able to get on the program.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So are we talking about funding this out of general fund? Or,
Yes.
I mean,
yeah,
because that's a $2 million.
Yeah, we.
That's a $2 million increase.
I'm sorry, Will, go ahead.
What'd you say, Will? I'm sorry.
I mean, that's quite the hefty increase. From that's some that's $1,750,000 that you put in there now. That's going to be about a cent on our tax rate. I just didn't know if we wanted to fund that with bond proceeds or what.
Well, it definitely could be funded by bonds because they are obviously long-term assets. And so, in 2021, we'll be looking for what needs to go in the 2021 bond sale. So, but I would imagine a lot of this would be in the 2022 bond sale. The time we get around to,
Well, I mean, we don't need to charge it to the 2021.
No, I agree.
To the 2021 general fund, if especially if we're working on getting to no net, no new revenue rate. So that's a big $1,750,000 is a big amount.
Yeah, but Will, I think the $1,750,000 would be great to put in there now, just for the simple fact, if we don't do it, bridges are going to fail. I would rather cut it
I know that, Kelly. I know we have to fix these bridges, and we've been putting it off forever and ever because we can't ever agree. And so I'm just talking about, do we really want to put it all on in the general fund right now?
Right.
Mess up all the calculations.
I'd rather take it from some of the non-mandated spending that we can cut and use it for stuff that we're supposed to be here for.
Near.
And possibly we may need to look at doing a little bit of both. We may need to take some of it out of the general fund, some out of the bond funds this year, but we do need to give it a boost to get that fund started and to get it, because I'm assuming it's something we're going to let continue to aggregate, correct? We're not going to.
Or are any of these going to be shovel ready by the end of, and this is a question for Zane, are any of these going to be shovel ready by the end of in 21?
I think two of them could be, yes. And that would be the Willow Branch Road could be in 2021. The Panther Branch Road really needs to be in 2021. So that's 650,000 estimated there. And then another 400,000 easily just on design, flood studies, geotech. I mean,
we'll bring in Francis' spreadsheet on the bonds that we've sold and what we've already spent and what the projection is. And there may be room there because professional services would come under. We've got that in our language for being, if it's professional services for a long-term project, that would qualify for
So you can always roll in the cost of engineering and architecture.
all soft costs
into the cost of an asset to depreciate.
So commissioners, we may have enough money. We'll see. Well,
Yes.
in the next week or so, we'll look at that.
Yes, on Tuesday, we'll look at permanent improvement fund very closely. And
Okay.
yes, there is some bond money sitting there. I know even after all the road projects, there's still some money there.
Right.
And so we can look at that and see how the bridges fit in, as well as anything else that you're looking at to fund out of the bond funds.
Right. And it may be that on a couple of these larger projects that we check back, I know on Spiegelville Road, the projects over in yours, Commissioner Perry, if you and Zane would talk to Walker and ask them if they think they're still going to come in around the amount that we think we're going to, and then Chapel, where we'll be in 21 on Chapel.
Spiegelville, we're sitting really good right now. We've had some cost savings to the tune of roughly $300,000, but we're still early in that project. That could be eaten up later on in the project. So far, we're sitting really good. And of course, Ritchie Road is complete and Surrey Ridge Road is complete, and we came in under on those as well. So,
You remember how much under on both of those roads?
not off the top of my head, but I can get that to you.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll have that report and we'll show what we budgeted those projects at and what they actually cost, Commissioner Snell, so you'll have that.
I'd ask, I'd email Francis right before the meeting about that, so.
Okay. So before we pull the trigger on this, we'll get that information. And it could be that we can just right off the bat put bond proceeds or allocate bond proceeds for part of this budget.
And if you want, we can leave those numbers there now just for discussion purposes, and then we'll come back and put those where we end up deciding to.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. With Amanda, or what do you?
Yes, if she was available, and I know you had some questions for her.
Amanda?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sorry, choking.
Either that or waking up. I wasn't sure.
She's getting all choked up.
No, you know me, always eating chocolate.
Okay, good. Okay, I guess if whatever part of the budget you want to go in, but you mentioned several times, and so I thought we ought to go ahead and have a discussion on your personnel needs that you've got and your justification for those, and I thought we could talk about that now and see where we get with it.
Sure thing. I have a presentation. I don't know how to share that. with y'all. Do I email it to you?
All right,
Can you press share screen?
Amanda, I've made you co-host, so you should be able to share your screen now.
But now that I have two monitors, is it going to share both monitors or just the one?
You'll be able to select which screen you want to share.
Okay. Okay, can you all see that?
we can see it, we can't read it. On the little small sheet, you may have to just read those bullet points out.
Okay, hold on just a sec.
That's better.
You need to adjust the view on it.
Well, I don't know what you're seeing. Give me just 1 second.
We're seeing there you go.
That better?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. With it being on two different screens here, it brings up the presentation view and a facilitator notes view. So that was the confusion. My apologies. So a lot of, I guess I put everything in here, the non-personnel related things. I can jump ahead to the personnel related things, and we can go back to whatever section we want to talk about the other budget line items. Last year, during budget sessions, we discussed that if we ended up taking over Jack Harwell, we felt like that would require an additional staff person in the Human Resources Office to provide that additional support, but we agreed with the Commissioner's Court to see what we could accomplish and what we could manage without adding that position. We did not even add a dollar placeholder. This year, when Francis's team requested the budget submissions from every office, I did not submit a request to add a staff person to my office, knowing all of the expressed concern from each of you about kind of the state of our funds and the state of the situation for our community businesses. And I took heed to that. However, after this past quarter, in the additional burden to this office, somewhat related specifically due to COVID activities, and then some of it related to the RFP processes we've undergone, we have a bulk of needs operationally that are very time sensitive that I don't have enough manpower to support, and it's very difficult to ask for that assistance. My team has taken